prescribed for us. We were invited into a system that we had no hand in creating. We had no significant influence in designing. But I don't know about you, I was born into a space where life had already been set up to be played in 3 periods. And with respect to my former CFL and NFL friends in the room, life sets up more like hockey than it does football. My friend Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime about 17 years ago that proposed that life could be looked at with 4 quarters. The truth is most people live a 3-period life, not a 4-quarter life. The 3-period life, for the most part, presumes that childhood, which these days stretches 25 or 30 years, it used to be less, but it's extending further. It takes that long for people to understand that their pants should be worn around their waist. South of the 49th, one of the greatest economic challenges on our horizon is a thing called student debt. I don't know if you're facing the same crisis up here, but Wall Street Journal reported a couple of weeks ago that the student debt crisis is trailing us because in the face of student debt, the delay of marriage, and the delay of marriage means the delay of home buying. The delay of home buying means that people who do not have a family because they have no spouse, have no roots in a community, and so the domino string of sociological effect, because this intractable debt that they've entered life with, having acquired a degree in ancient Sumerian art history, and not knowing how the $100,000 in student debt is going to be ameliorated by a $25,000 teaching assignment. You know, the mitigation of life is difficult to reconcile when you have that kind of bondage that you enter with. So how long does childhood last? Well, it's as long as it takes to get educated and get a career. And growing up into career invites you finally into the real game. And the real game says it's now about life in the big city. You've got responsibility. The responsibility is generally lived out in 2 categories for most people. They've got a family responsibility and a professional responsibility. And life, for the most part, represents an ongoing compromise, most often conflict between the 2. Common denominator for most of us in the room is that we've reached a place where we invited participation into our lives to a personal faith relationship with Jesus Christ. If that doesn't resonate with you, see me before you leave this morning. But once you do that, let me just tell you what we've unfortunately done too often. We've introduced an eternal solution that doesn't begin to present current value. So we got people who know where they're going when they die, but they have no clue what's going to happen between here and there. And that difficulty is lived out in this differential between family commitment, career commitment, proclaiming that we have an eternal solution that doesn't look like it offers much in terms of current benefit. So here we are. We're living about a 40-year period between it's your turn and the commencement of this prize, the pot of gold that is out there at the end of the rainbow. To the credit of the Canadian culture, you all, whenever I visit Canada, I'm struck with the fact that there's a significant commitment to pension planning and to the long-term financial issues. And so we just all anticipate that the relief of this midlife stress that's being lived with a demand, and I would underscore demand, because whatever you do for work presumes that it will be the priority and your family will come up a distant second. The career demands of the middle of life finally offering the relief that comes when you transition to the 3rd period. And the 3rd period we've just come to call retirement. It's the caption that's below the picture that shows us in full-time, full engagement leisure. I was born onto the planet almost 60 years ago, and when I was born, the notion of retirement in the early 50s, the lifespan in the U.S., I'm presuming that Canada would be fairly similar. Lifespan expectation was late 60s at best, and if a 65-year-old retirement point was set in life, you had about 3 years to clean out the garage and make life easier for your heirs. Well, great system. You didn't have to worry much about what you were going to do post-career. But here we are with the gift of prolonged earthly life and the planning that makes it possible to start thinking in terms of different pursuits at or about the middle 60s mark. We're faced with a challenge that prior generations did not have to deal with, and that is the question, what are you going to do when you no longer have to do it? What will life look like when some of the earlier stage commitments and responsibilities have transitioned into a new era where your definition of life is no longer career-centric? Well, one of the things that I've discovered is that there's an insistence at the core of your being, once you come into a faith relationship with Jesus Christ, that disallows a satisfaction from life through acquiring or achieving career success. And it is simply this: you were made for more. Pascal has frequently been quoted in evangelistic settings with a summation. He never said these words, but they would be an adequate summation of a longer monologue of his. You've heard it, that in every man and woman there's a God-shaped vacuum that only he can fill. It's a great premise that captures the essence of what Pascal said. Allow me to play off of that. Don't blame Pascal for this is mine. But I believe that once that vacuum has been filled, a new vacuum is created. That in the serious follower of the Lord Jesus, there's a calling-shaped vacuum that only he can fill. Apart from redemption, there's a longing for relationship with God, but once that relationship has been secured, there's an insistence at the core of your being that says, you're here for something. You were made for more. That the introduction of a new consideration that transforms your life and goes beyond career is introduced into your consideration. I'm struck with the dominant faces of the New Testament period who demonstrate this premise that I'm presenting to you this morning. The great model of the New Testament obviously is the Lord Jesus. And just to look at his life, the best planned life ever, wouldn't you say? His life plan before the foundations of the earth, the plan of Jesus' entry into creation had been cast in heaven. And here he arrives, and though the clamor over his birth and wise men coming from the east and all of what surrounded that, it leads to an assignment in the village of Nazareth where he abides in relative obscurity up to his 30th birthday. And if you'd asked anybody in the neighborhood, he was simply the son of the carpenter who had died, and he's running the family business, supporting his mother and his brothers and his sisters, and he makes pretty good cabinets. And if he needs something built, he doesn't have any customer service department because he doesn't need one. He gets it right the first time. Great reputation. And if you'd asked anybody, who is he? They would have said, the carpenter, son of the carpenter. At age 30, he reorients his pursuits. He already knew when he was going to die. You don't have that insight. He did. And so for the Lord Jesus, he retires at 30. And for the next 3 years, he devotes his retirement to his calling. Isn't it interesting that almost 20 years in a carpenter's shop, and there isn't one verse in 4 biographies that tell us a thing about a day in the life of a carpenter? Not one. But the dominant remembrance of his life in the Gospels is about what went on in those 3 years when he lived out his calling.